actually being at Mount Sinai and being around all you guys, that's where I started investing because of you guys. Because you come in there and you feel like I've just walked into Wall Street. Everyone's always talking about this stock, that stock, investments. Like we really did, like, the conversations that we had. I learned a lot, and it was only because of learning that I'm like, you know what, I got to start thinking about investing my money, like, seriously, getting involved in the market.
So today we have my ex-coworker Eugene Raygorodsky. Did I say that right?
That's correct.
And he's a nurse too, and he has a pretty awesome backstory. So Eugene, let us know who you are and what you're currently doing, and then we could always backtrack to how you got started into nursing.
Okay, so my name is Eugene Raygorodsky. I'm currently an assistant nurse manager in an emergency department. I've been a nurse for about 10 years. This May is going to be 11 years. Started my career in Brooklyn, where I grew up most of my life. Started out at NYU Brooklyn, which is NYU Langone. Used to be Lutheran. Started off on the med-surg floor for about a year. Worked literally, I think I got hired in May, and then I left in June of next year, because back then you had to do med-surg before you were going to go to the ER.
Mm-hmm.
Different world now.
Way different world.
Yeah. And so I went into the ER, worked 2.5 years or 3 years, worked my way up into charge. And then I got lucky. I was young. I was probably 26 or 27 years old. And I got an opportunity to become one of the managers of the emergency department. And I ended up being a manager. I was there for about 2.5 years as a manager. And that transition was definitely, it was not the easiest, because I went from being a staff nurse to a manager. And there was nurses there that had way more experience than me,
Mm-hmm.
people that were older than me, people that were even younger than me, but were nurses for longer than I was. So I went through all of that, and then I got burnt out. I was in the ER for about 6 years at that point, and I remember I was sitting in a meeting. Actually, I tell this story all the time. I was sitting in a meeting, and it was me, it was the head of the ER, the head of cardiology, and we're just talking. We're just kind of talking before the meeting. Nobody had walked into the big boardroom yet. And they start talking about, oh, like, did your kids start asking that question? Did your kids start asking the question? And I'm like, talking about. And he's like, oh, like, why you're never home? And like, when they said that, I don't know. It was like, one of those moments in your life where like something just clicks in your head.
Yeah.
And it was kind of, remember, I'll never forget it. I was sitting there. They said that, and I start thinking, and then everyone starts walking into the room, the meeting, all the directors, nurse managers, whoever. And I'm watching them, and I'm looking at their faces, and everybody's smiling. Everyone's smiling, hello. But do they really want to be there?
Yeah.
Like, if this is like, if this is how they're, what they're talking about. I don't know. I just had an epiphany. I was like, you know what? I don't think I want to do this, like, for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
And at the time I was working 3 to 11. So it was like, right, it was almost like a 9 to 5, 8-hour shift thing. And that's when I decided I'm leaving. I'm not doing administration. I don't think this is for me. It took me another year, maybe 6 months, something like that. And then I ended up with you at Mount Sinai, the cath lab. I actually stepped down and went to the cath lab as a staff nurse. And actually the interview process for Mount Sinai was actually the most rigorous interview I've ever had.
Really?
For the cath lab, yeah, because what they did was I interviewed, I forgot who our director was at the time, but then they had all the nurse. Like I finished the interview. And
all the nurses interview you too.
All the nurses interview now, and I'm thinking, okay, they just want to get to know me and all that kind of stuff. No, they were asking like clinical questions. Like they were putting me on the spot. Like, what's an inotrope? Do you give nitro? When can't you give nitro? And I was like, oh my God. And I got a heads up from somebody. So I kind of like reviewed some stuff, but some stuff I told them, listen, I'll answer what I can, but the things I didn't know, I don't know. I think I answered like 50%.
I'm willing to learn.
Yeah, I'm willing to learn. And I ended up at Mount Sinai Cath Lab. That was, to be honest, I learned a lot. I think I became a much more knowledgeable nurse working on that cath. We do a lot of complicated cases there, and the nurses really know a lot. Like that was the first time where I was like, wow, there's like a lot of smart people around here.
Yeah, there are.
A lot, condensed, like really good nurses who know cardiology, know all kind of stuff. So that was really cool. And then COVID hit,
Mhm.
and I think they remember they shut down the cath lab,
Yeah,
and
shuts it
everyone started
down.
getting sent to
Sent
their
away, yeah.
where they used to work or where they were needed. And I told them, I was like, listen, if you're gonna send me anywhere, just send me to the ER. I don't want to go to the floor or anything like that.
Mhm.
So I was working at Mount Sinai ER, and that was crazy.
Yeah.
Obviously, we
I
know
can only
damn well
imagine.
that was, that was like I was thinking it was 6 or 8 weeks that we were doing that. I remember I had to
Mhm.
move in with my brother because my second kid was just born. Nobody knew what was going on, obviously at the
Yeah.
time. So I left the house. I
Yeah,
literally left
I
the
left the
house.
house too.
Because you had a baby too, right? At
I
that time,
just had, my daughter born, and then, I sent my wife and daughter to my parents' house just so I wouldn't bring home anything to them.
right, right. Yeah, I
Crazy.
remember everybody was doing that. It was just so wild. And so I was living with my brother for like 6 to 8 years. No, 6 to 8 years, 6 to 8 weeks, 6 to 8 years. Felt like 6 to 8.
It felt long, it felt
I
long.
was sleeping on a couch. But so that happened, and then right after COVID, on a vacation to Miami. Then we went on a vacation to the Caribbean or whatever for New Year's. Man, it's like nice weather. I was like, I would love to just live like this all the time. Like it'd be nice just
Mhm.
to live that type of lifestyle. I was like, and at the time, like the traveling was big, and the contracts were going all everything. It was all nursing was just going crazy.
Was
People were making ridiculous amounts of money. So not to stop the story, but I met so many travelers along the way, so many
Yeah.
people, and like there was this one dude. He went on a contract to Alaska. Okay,
Alaska.
yeah, like a nursing college. Like it was like a ER or something like that.
Mhm.
But so he had to take a plane, like a regular plane to Alaska. He gets to Alaska. Then he gets on those, those little ringy-dingy planes where it's like only
Oh,
you and the
yeah.
pilot, and that's it. And he got flown to some remote part of Alaska. I don't know where it was, but basically it's like 12 hours light, 12 hours night type of thing. So when he was there, it was just, I think it was always dark. Or always, I don't remember what he told me. Oh, no, the sun was always out. That's right. The sun was always out, and like he took care of like the native people there. They were like like Eskimo, like they like
Eskimos and polar
lived off
bears.
yeah, they were literally living off the land, eating whale blubber. But this dude was making like, and he showed me his pay stub. It's like 12 or 13 thousand dollars a week.
What?
A week. And so I was like, well, that's crazy. Where do I find a contract like that? Like I want to like, try to catch it. And so, anyways, when I left Mount Sinai, I took a travel contract down in Florida, went to Miami to a cath lab. Big difference between New York City cath lab,
And like,
Miami. Well, at least the one place I was at. I mean, I'm not going to mention any names, but it was just different. It was different. And again, the training that I got at Mount Sinai, I realized, wow, I was like, I was in a real special place because again, we learn so much, we see so much in that lab.
mhm.
You go anywhere else, you really get to appreciate like, wow, I really do know a lot.
Yeah.
And so I was there for about like 6 months, and then I took an ER contract, one of those big contracts. I went to New Orleans. I
Oh,
was in New
nice.
Orleans for like 6 8 months. I caught like the tail end of it, um, and I think it was like 60 hours a week, 5 days a week, 60 hours a week. And what ended up happening was, so it was one of those big contracts. I think I was making like 9,600 a week. I think it
Dang.
was 9,600 a week. And so what happened was I get there. The orientation was about an hour. Because so like they used Epic, which I was used to. It was a
Mhm.
small ER. I'm used to working in big level one trauma centers. And I was like, I was like, all right, where's the supplies? Where's the Omnicell? Well, how does your triage work? Okay. And within an hour, I was like, I'll take a district. You don't need to do anything.
Don't even worry. I got it.
Don't even worry, I got it. And they was like, oh, no, the New Yorker. I was like,
We know our
a
shit.
week. Yeah. I was like,
And we're
listen,
fast.
this is fine. Yeah, I can do this. I've done worse. And about a week into it, they're like, hey, do you mind taking charge? I was like, no, no, no problem. I'll do it. I was like, no, hell yeah, I'll do it. It's like, it
Traveler
was
charge.
traveler charge. And then I ended up being a traveler there, a charge nurse sometimes, picking up his charge, working there for 6 8 months. And then my son called crying. Because again, so what I was doing was, because we already lived in Florida at the time. So I'd work those 5 days. And
Mhm.
then the next morning of I would stack my 2 days off. In the morning, I'd catch a 6 a.m. flight to Fort Lauderdale,
Mhm.
get there, spend that day there. The next day, I had a flight at night catch to go back. So I literally flew in one
Oh,
day, was flying
dang.
out the next. So it was crazy, you know. So I did that for 6 months, and then my son called me and he was crying, and I literally came to them the next day. I was like, guys, I gotta go. I can't like extend. I can't do this. You know, I was away from my kids, you know, for a long time. Especially like when we first moved down here. You know, I took a travel contract. They still stayed in New
In New
York. By the
York,
time they
yeah.
moved down here, that was like 3 months. I was away from my kid, like I said, for COVID for like another
Yeah.
2 months. It was like a whole it was like a year and a half of just craziness, and I'm sure everybody went through it. And anyways, I came back. I took a local contract here in Florida and like a ER, and then I said, I have two boys, and we all train jujitsu. I started jujitsu, by the
Yeah,
way.
I saw
That's why
that, yeah.
I'm all banged up always. um, and I was like, I need health insurance because, you know,
Mm,
I got two little boys. God forbid something happens, and I was like, it's time to settle down. And what I did was I knew that I could not take a full-time, like regular staff job because A, I was getting burnt out again. B, I knew that I needed to leverage my experience to get as much money as I could because down
yeah.
here in Florida, it's a different game. It's
I
a
heard they
different
don't even
game,
pay that well down there.
bro. These poor, I mean,
These four nurses down there.
these poor like nurses that are just coming out of like
School.
some of these hospitals are offering them like anywhere between, I've heard $25 an hour. Still today, this is today, $25 an hour.
$5 an hour.
I've heard 30 all the way up to 32. See, the thing is, all right, this is what I learned. Florida is a totally different game down here. It's not like New York. And you know, like coming from New York, I think we're a little spoiled in the sense that like in regards to nursing, because listen, there's unions.
Mhm.
Um, and I've worked both sides of it. Like I said, I was a manager in New
Yeah.
York, plus I was a staff nurse. So I dealt with the union on both sides. And there's pluses and minuses. We can go into it. I'm sure we both know the pluses and minuses. But one of the pluses is that we get paid well.
Mhm.
There's really good health insurance, vacation time, sick time, all that kind of stuff. They
Yeah.
don't have that.
Dang, I did not
And
know
they
that.
don't have like, so it's really different. Like there's no, like when I was telling them, I was like, yeah, New York, you know, you start a job and you get your 4 weeks of vacation, right? You get
Yeah.
well, you know, at least
Immediately once you sign on.
immediately. You get, I mean, I don't know if it's different now, but when I started in New York, it was 4 weeks of vacation, and then you got your sick time bank, and then you
Yep.
got your like holidays, whichever it was, 6 or 7 of them
Mhm.
for the year, and then you get your was it sick time, holiday time? What
Get
else was it?
your emergency free days.
That's right. That's right. The emergency free day. That's right. That's right. That stuff. And then after 5 years, you get your fifth week of vacation.
Yeah.
Dude, you tell these nurses down here that have been working for a while, they're like, where is this magical place and how do I get there? You know, they don't know. Like, and it's because, see, the thing is, and the reason now I understand why it is the way it is down here. First of all, there are a lot of for-profit hospitals.
Mm.
The big two that are here it's HCA and Tenet. Those are two big for-profit corporations. They have hospitals throughout the whole country,
Mhm.
and they're for-profit. And so, you know, working for them is a little bit different than what we're used to. And then you have, you know, obviously there's a lot of other smaller, not-for-profit hospitals, but it's not the same. They don't get the
They
same
don't have
type
the
of benefits.
resources and all that.
The resources are there. It's just the way that like the benefits packages and how nurses get paid and all that kind of stuff is not the same. So like I was saying, these new nurses are coming out, they get like $25 an hour from one place, but then they can go and like negotiate some other place. And some people I've heard started $42 an hour, which is good
It's
for
not bad.
Florida.
Yeah.
For Florida, it's good. But they do. I feel like the nurses down here, they definitely don't make as much. And the problem is the cost of living drastically went up in Florida.
Is that due to
Because
COVID?
it's because of us New Yorkers, man.
Oh, because I all came down there.
Everyone came down. They sold their houses up here,
Hmm.
came down with cash, ran up the prices. So you know there was a ton of people moving. I think they were saying there was like, I don't even know, it was like 100,000 people coming to Florida every year, or maybe it was more. It was some ridiculous number, some number that they've never seen before. And it, you know, I remember like before the first market crash in 2007, there was also a boom in Florida. There was a boom in the
Hmm.
bust. Prices went up, people started buying up houses, and then everything crashed, and the
Crashed.
prices
Yep.
went, you know, everything crashed So there's another boom going on over here, but this one's a little bit different because people are here to stay. They're not, coming and going.
Yeah.
Like I said, they people sold their houses in New York, made a ton of money, came down here, New York, New Jersey, it was just the Northeast really. But there's also like a lot of international people that moved down here. I live in Fort Lauderdale, and the
Hmm.
development that's happening around me is crazy. Like you drive around, and there's just buildings popping up like left and right.
Dang.
And you can just tell. Like I've only been here 3 years, and I could already tell that there's been a change, like in the amount of people that are moving down here. So the cost of living is going up so high, but the salaries are not catching up to it. And that, and so there's like I've literally one of my so they have in Florida they have medics, like paramedics working in the ER.
Oh, what?
Yeah, so instead of having like PCTs, right?
Hmm.
They don't. They have like paramedics
Wow.
and EMTs working in the ER, and they work as PCTs, meaning they'll help urinal, help clean the patient, move the patient, but they can also put in IVs. They can
But they're
chalk
highly
lines.
skilled.
They're highly skilled, yeah. And every facility is different. I've heard there's some facilities where they're allowed to put in Foley's. There's some facilities where they can even give like some basic meds. Like
Mm.
in New Orleans, there was hospitals where the medics were able to give like Zofran, hang a bolus, and all that kind of stuff. So a little different setup.
Mhm.
And anyways, I've been down here already 3 years. It's been a year since I took this full-time job. I'm the assistant nurse manager, and that's where I'm at now.
So let's backtrack. You went over a lot, which was awesome. Where did you get your nursing degree, or when?
Yeah, so I became a nurse. So I graduated. I went to started community college. From my community college, I went to Stony Brook out in Long Island.
Okay.
Was doing pre med, but I was also partying and in a frat and just being an idiot. And I graduated with a history degree, but I had all my pre med stuff. And long story short, I was like, I don't know if med school's for me. I was like, what else can I do? And my mom's like, oh, you should be a nurse. And I literally, I didn't even, I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. And so I went into like one of those 1 year accelerated bachelor programs. There's one, it was a college, it's called Wagner College in Staten Island.
Okay.
And I was there for 15 months. Um, so after 15 months, I graduated to December 2012. I graduated and I started working May 2013.
Nice. And then I know we went into your backstory coming to America. How was the transition from there to here?
From like, you mean like when I immigrated?
Yeah. How old were you?
Well, no, dude, I was a baby, man.
Oh,
I
you were a
was
baby.
I
Okay.
was a baby, man. I was 8 months old, man.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't remember
I,
much.
for some reason, I thought you came here like a
No,
teenager, but I was like, this
no,
guy's
no,
probably my age.
no, 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 no. I grew up here. I grew up here. I can do everything. I just can't be president.
So the transition. Wait, so you are now in Florida, and then you came down there as a cath travel nurse, and then a ER travel nurse, and now you're assistant manager again. Why did you want to go back into management?
Uh, it was, well, honestly, two honest reasons, honestly, and it was not because I want to be in management. Honestly, it was because I was getting burnt out again,
Hmm.
being like a floor nurse. I just felt it. I felt I had that feeling already. I went through it before. And I didn't want it to get to that point where I was just like, when you get burnt out, it's just
Yeah.
starts affecting your personal life and all that kind of stuff and your mental health. And I was like, all right, I need some change. But I still want to stay in the ER, so I took this assistant nurse manager position because of that and because of the pay bump. I knew that I had the experience to
Mm,
leverage and to be able to negotiate a decent salary. It's still not what I would be making as a assistant manager in New York, probably, but I definitely was able to get something competitive that I was happy with, and those are the
and for the pay, I guess, is it that much different than a staff nurse? Is it like that big?
like I said. So there's these hospitals, and I'm sure it's all hospitals, a lot of new nurses. They're hiring a lot of new nurses, a lot of older nurses. They're
Oh yeah.
traveling, they're moving, bouncing. So there's a lot of new nurses. So yeah, compared to a brand new nurse, definitely compared to even a nurse that's been there a while, um, I will say this ballpark figures. I think nurses that have my experience, so like 10, 11 years, and
Hmm.
they've stayed in one hospital and never
Hmm.
moved here, they're probably making something in the 30s, like 30 bucks an
Oh,
hour to 40 bucks an
what?
hour. Yeah, man. Yeah.
Dang.
If they make a little more than that, that's because they bounced around. A lot of full-time nurses here, I mean, a lot of Florida nurses, they leave full-time and they work agency. A lot of Florida nurses, they're leaving full-time and they're going per diem, or they're doing like agency work because they're able to make more per hour. And I guess
Hmm.
they usually have a partner. There's always like, because I always ask them, what do you do for health insurance? You know, you
Yeah.
need it. There's, they have kids and stuff. And it's usually the partner who's working another
Mm.
job, and they're able to, use the insurance from there. And so they're able to leverage. So like say 10 years, 11 years experience. If you're a full timer, probably like 30 to 40, maybe a little bit more. And then like nurse, assistant nurse managers, or what they call clinical managers, which is like, it's like different. Like in New York, we have charge nurses, right?
Yeah.
There's a charge nurse and there's a manager, and then there's
Yeah.
a director.
Yeah.
Well, here there's a charge nurse, then there's like a clinical manager, and then there's like a nurse manager, and then there's a director. And the clinical manager, it's almost like just like being like a charge nurse basically,
Hmm.
but you also have responsibilities with the staff, just like a nurse manager would. It's like almost like a hybrid role, I
Hmm.
would say. Um and so people that are working those type of jobs, they're making from anywhere from 40 to 50 an hour, somewhere within that range, whatever you're able to negotiate. And then the
Hmm.
next bump up, I know, without going into like higher up management, like a supervisor, like a house soup, we called them like CCCs in my other hospital
CCCs.
in Brooklyn. There was like coordinators or something like that, but basically administrators, right?
Hmm.
When all the directors leave, they're the ones that take over and deal with the issues running the hospital. Those are making, I would say, anywhere from $50 to $60 plus or minus,
Hmm.
depending. And again, it's really the pay is all over the place, because you got these non-for-profit hospitals, you have these for-profit hospitals. There's no unions here, so it's like it's kind of all over the place. And then down here, there's we have city hospitals, like back from my old
Yeah.
neighborhood, Coney Island. That was like a city hospital. I forgot, what are they
Yeah.
called? What's the organization that runs
Um,
them?
Shoot, I can't even remember. But
I
everyone,
can't. It's like city hospital something, or I forgot what it's called.
I think it's just NYC H&H or something like that.
Something like that. Anyways, so there's something like that down here. They call them county hospitals. And so the two big ones down here, the two big systems, Broward General, and Jackson Memorial. So Jackson's in Miami and Broward is in like Fort Lauderdale
Hmm.
area. And those are like the county hospitals. And those are the ones that have like better benefits, pensions even. I think
Oh,
Jackson
really?
still has pensions. Yeah. Um, I think Jackson even has a union, which is very rare down here, but I've heard that they have a union. Probably not as strong as obviously a union from New York, but they do have one. And
Hmm.
another big place that people like to work, because of the benefits and everything, and that's very comparable to New York City hospitals, is the VA.
Oh,
The
okay. Yeah,
VA.
VA. I could see that.
Yeah.
Since you're saying you're able to like negotiate the salary, I'm sure like a lot of nurses aren't good at that because we aren't taught that. How are you able to leverage all your experience? Like, do you have to just put it on a paper and be like, hey, this is what I can do? How much can you give me? Or you have to like give the number and see if they'll meet you?
They always ask you, like, well, before anything, they ask you, well, how much you want to make? And I
Mm,
hate answering that question.
$1
I
million.
don't even think that's, yeah, like a million, a bazillion dollars, like I always like try to like, I try to avoid it. I start, asking different questions, because I don't want to answer that question. I want to see what you're going to give me first. And
Hmm.
then I'll be able to kind of like tell you how much I think I should make. I have like a number in my head, but I would definitely not try to give them a number before they gave me a
Oh,
number,
right.
that's number one. Number two, what the way I got this job, actually, there's this it's like a headhunting company. It's called
Hmm.
Incredible, I think it's Credible Nurse or Incredible Health. And basically I started a profile with them, and you update your resume, you give them all your experience, they call you, they interview you, kind of, get a
Yeah.
little, more detail about you, and then they send you So a job application. So they work with the hospitals. They get these job openings. Then they work with the nurses. They fill out these profiles and they just kind of match people. And actually, that's how I was able to find this job. And I negotiated. Well, I got the job and interview through them, and I basically negotiated the salary. They knew how much I wanted to make,
Hmm.
so the hospital kind of already knew what I was looking for. And so when I got the offer, it was a little bit less than what I wanted. I asked for them to increase it, and they were able to match what I asked for,
Hmm.
and that was it.
Nice. So yeah, that's like a tough thing because I've heard some coworkers that left Sinai and go to other places that don't have union, and they're like, "Oh, you could negotiate your salary. What do I ask for?" I was like, "Well, if you're leaving here and you're not going to be in the union anymore, you should ask for more, at least a few thousand more, because you don't know how your health insurance is going to be and all that." They're like, "But is there any like guideline online?" I was like, "Bro, I've been at Sinai my whole life. I don't know." like it's definitely a tough topic, especially like you said, where they're probably thinking of a number for you because they don't want to pay you more, but it seems like there is wiggle room as long as you have like certain experience or if they think you're like a
Yes.
solid fit for it.
That's exactly it. Honestly, like it all depends. Like if you have experience, like good experience, and that's what they're looking for, then you'll leverage it. Or like for example, like we can both have the same experience, but like you're trying something new, you're going to the OR, you don't have more experience. Well, then that's probably you're gonna not be able to ask for more money in those kind of cases. But it's not like New York. Like in New York, you go to a hospital in New York. There's no negotiating. It's all
Yeah.
unions. It's already how many years? Okay, it's like a calculation they already have. Boom,
Yeah.
boom, boom, boom. This is how much you make, and that's it. Like you can't negotiate.
Hmm.
But I think outside of New York and California, the two big union states, I think that's how it is. That's been my experience here. And when I was in Louisiana, New Orleans, that's kind of how when I was talking to the full timers there, that's kind of how it worked for them. Again, I think nurses from New York and from California, we are kind of in this little box, like we're isolated from the rest because it's so different.
So
It's so
different. Yep.
different working in those type of states.
You're making a lot of money. You have a protection of a union. You most likely have a pension, but you're living in a high cost of living area. So it's all about, I guess, financially from that standpoint, how you control your money from there.
Yes,
Because
that's
like
100%.
we all know that you worked here. There's a lot of people that do a million hours of OT and they're making well into the 200s, but then it seems like a lot of people are just like living paycheck to paycheck still. So it's tough.
Yeah, man. No, it definitely is. And all the smart, the nurses that I've met that are really smart, they do the typical things that you do with investment. They bought real estate,
Hmm.
or they invested. Actually, being at Mount Sinai and being around all you guys, that's where I started investing because of you guys. Because you come in there and you feel like I've just walked into Wall Street. Everyone's always talking about this stock, that stock, investments. Like we really did like the conversations that we had. I learned a lot, and it was only because of learning that I'm like, you know what, I got to start thinking about investing my money, like seriously, getting involved
Hmm.
in the market. That was also when things were going crazy, 21, right before the crash. You
Yeah.
know,
But
things
that's
were
still the same. There's a lot of us still talking about it because like we
yeah,
can't have our life solely around nursing all the time.
right. But so I met this one nurse that I used to work with back in Brooklyn. He ended up buying it was like a multifamily. He
Hmm.
couldn't afford it at the time, so him and his sister bought it, and now I'm sure he's doing really well. So absolutely, man, you definitely have to, especially in New York where things are very expensive. You have to be smart, or else you're going to be working all those hours, and you're not really
It
going to have
goes to
much to show
nothing.
for it.
You're just
It's
tired, and like
terrible.
you said, you're not hanging out with your family, and the money is disappears just as fast as it got into your bank account. So with your new A&M job, what's your hours? Is it still 3 to 11?
No, no. So this role, 12 hours.
Oh,
And
nice.
again, remember I told you down here's a little different, like charge nurses and clinical managers, kind of like a mix of a position. So my title is assistant nurse manager, but when I come on shift, I'm like the charge nurse. I run the ER for my shift. It's
Hmm.
12 hours. I work nights right now just because I went back to school
Oh, nice.
for my psych NP,
Look at you.
and yeah, and so it just nights just works with the kids and all that stuff. Even though like it's not
You're
easy, but
tired, but they see you.
tired. Yes, exactly. You're there. You're present. I get more done. Honestly, it's weird, but I get more done. And so my role, so I'm like a charge nurse and hybrid nurse manager, basically. Like I have all the responsibilities of as a charge nurse would, but then I also have there's staff that report to me directly.
Hmm.
If there's any issues with that between staff,
Sick
the next
calls, all
step,
that stuff.
all that stuff I take care of for my shift, and then like I escalate directly to my director. There's no manager in between.
Oh, okay. And then
So
is the hospital you're working at paying for your tuition? Is there like a tuition reimbursement?
no.
Dang. Maybe we are
There is
super
not.
spoiled here in New York.
Yes, yes, you are. And I should have done, shoulda, woulda, coulda. No, the place that I work, well, does not. Um, they don't provide. If I think if they were telling me like the nurses were saying that if you were getting your bachelor's, I think there's some sort of assistance that they do, but
Mhm,
uh, but not for your master's. And that's where I work. I think there's other hospitals, and again, I work for one of these for-profit hospitals.
mhm,
Um, I think some of the nonprofit hospitals down here they do have some sort of reimbursement, but it's not
mhm.
like in New York, where like some
It's like
places they pay
100%.
100%. Some give you like I think NYU was giving us like 10,000 for the year or something like that,
Mhm.
from what I remember. Down here, I think the best I ever heard was about 5,000 for the year
And that's
that they
not
give.
even the place that you're working at.
No.
So why'd you choose Psych NP?
Oh man. Again, I'm always, I don't know. My whole career, I've jumped around so much. I never. I learned really quickly. You can't be stagnant as a nurse.
Mhm,
I didn't want to be one of those nurses that 20 years, same unit, same place. You don't know. You haven't worked anywhere else. You did the same thing your whole life. You've done bedside. Your back is broken. Your knees are broken. Like I'm not
yeah,
trying to do all that. You know.
yeah,
And so early on, I learned that like you do need to jump around. And I'm the type I always I get I want excitement. I want to learn something. I always want to do something new. And it's just my career kind of worked out that way. I started med surg, ER, management, cath lab, travel, this, and so I got to a point where like, all right, listen. First of all, again, the salaries down here aren't as good. What can I do to increase how much I make? I got to become
mhm,
an NP, right? Obviously, it's the
mhm,
next progression. But FNP is oversaturated. And also, I want to be working for myself eventually. I want to have the opportunity to open up my own
mm,
business.
mhm.
And as an FNP, it's possible, like, there's
It'd
plenty of
be like
FNPs that
urgent
do it.
care and all that.
Urgent care, or like my wife's cousin, she's an OBGYN NP and she
Mm,
has her own place. But first of all, I mean, at least from my circle, I don't know a lot of FNPs that work for themselves. This is very,
mhm,
very rare, honestly, that you really like hear someone really opening up their own place or something like that. You hear it, but I mean, at least me, I haven't experienced that. And so the reason why I picked Psych NP was number one, I realized that I have a better opportunity to open up something myself. Either
mhm.
like, if it was just a regular kind of like just being like a therapist, or there's a lot of new interesting stuff happening. You know about the ketamine infusion clinics?
Yeah, I have been looking at
Yeah.
those
Yeah. So that's a really new, well, I mean, it's not really new. It's been
because
around
they
for like,
do
I
like
think
kind of
5 years
like
at least.
they do some ketamine, like microdosing, and then they also do some sort of like therapy with it, right? Is that the one you're
Exactly.
talking about? Okay,
Yes,
that's yeah,
yes,
I've looked
yes.
into that.
Yeah, yeah. It's been going on for 5 years. Basically, the studies have shown that ketamine, the way they found it out actually was, the medics used to give ketamine, and they still do. Like, you got, EDP in the street, someone's acting out, they need to go down. They would give these people ketamine. And what they started realizing was then later on, these people started kind of like saying they felt better. Some of them that had histories of depression were saying, "Oh wow," like they started doing research, and the research showed that it actually ketamine treats depression, it treats PTSD, it treats all these psychological kind of
Hmm.
sicknesses. And so they started doing these ketamine infusion clinics. And so it's for people that failed like regular therapy with like, PO
Yeah.
medication. So, I believe you have to have like a track record, like you've tried it, hasn't worked. And so then now you can get this ketamine infusion and the results are, they're actually
Yeah.
impressive.
That's actually
Like
what
these people,
I was like looking at when I was like researching it. It's pretty big in California, I believe, and it was big with like Marines or anyone with like PTSD or like our armed forces. And then I was like, oh wow. And then I started listening to some podcasts and some people were talking about that's the only thing that helped them. And now they're actually like super functioning when before anxiety, depression, PTSD, everything you're talking about. And I was like, oh wow, that is like when you hear ketamine, you're like, oh, another drug addict or whatever. But then if it's actually being
yeah,
used like microdosing or that,
right.
it seems like it's working pretty well.
It is. And what happens is these people come in, they have like, I think like a couple of sessions, like for like it's like over a 4 week period, they go twice a week. And the most important thing is the therapy. Like it goes hand in hand, the medicine, the ketamine and the therapy together.
Hmm.
And they do these sessions 4 weeks and then they're good. Some people are good for like 6 months to a year.
Wow.
They don't need any medications. They feel great. And so I was like, wow, that's really interesting. That's like different,
Hmm.
And then I started doing a little more research, and now FDA is in the last leg of reviewing and possible approval for MDMA,
Okay.
like ecstasy,
Yeah.
Molly, MDMA for the treatment of PTSD, depression, suicidality, and also psilocybin, which is the magic mushrooms, right?
Yeah.
The mushrooms that make you kind of hallucinate. So there's been research since the 70s about specifically like all the psychedelic medicine, psilocybin, and I think people go away to Peru to do ayahuasca, all those kind of natural things. And so the FDA has been doing there's been a lot of research, and they're literally, I think MDMA, I don't know how far along they are, but I think they were, from what I was reading, that was going to be the first one that has the highest chance of getting FDA approval for
Really.
for treatment of PTSD and all that kind of stuff and depression. And so I was like, wow, that's really cool. I would love to get involved in that because I always like watch podcasts. You hear Joe Rogan talking about it,
Hmm.
all this kind of stuff all the time, and it's really interesting. So I actually ended up going to a conference. There was one in Miami. It's called Wonderland, and it's like mental health, psychedelics, and longevity.
Hmm.
And like there's people from all different fields from all over the world, and they came and they were talking about like just psychedelics and how I think there was one clinic that was in Europe. I think it was in Germany. They've been doing ketamine for a long time, and
Oh
they're
dang.
starting to get into the psilocybin, and it's really interesting stuff. It's new. And I was like, you know what? That sounds interesting. Why don't I do that? So I was like, the first step is I gotta get my psych NP, right? And then,
Can
you
you
know,
not do that with like I guess like an adult Jerry NP or like that's what I
so
wonder.
like you mean like treat like mental health, but as a
Yeah,
geriatric
I'm
NP.
guessing you have to be specialized in the psych NP. That's what I'm thinking. Now that I'm thinking about it
So
more, this
yeah,
makes more sense.
you well, so the thing is, so I was talking to some of the docs down here, and like down here, there's a huge like issue with like um, mental health with like pediatric. There's not a lot of pediatric providers. There's not a lot of uh, psychiatrists or
Hmm.
psychologists that want to deal with kids. So it ends up being the
NP.
pediatricians who are like
Oh,
treating these kids, yeah, for mental health, and like they can do it, of course, but is that their specialty? No. Plus they're dealing with all this other like stuff, that's not kind of their main focus type of thing. And so there's huge need for it in the state of Florida. I know that if you're going to do mental health, if you're going to treat mental health, you have to be a psych NP.
okay.
um, but it's interesting, how like in New York, like the NPs could be autonomous after 3,000. I think it's like after
Yeah.
3,000 hours, you become
Hmm.
autonomous, and if you practice or have your own business, you don't need a medical director after
Yep.
3,000 hours. So in Florida, you can do that same thing, but only for if you're practicing general medicine, family
Oh,
medicine. If
okay.
you're going to specialize like psych, there is no,
You
you're
need a
always going to have to
collaborating
have,
physician.
always, yeah. And so, yeah, I don't think the geriatrics or any like special, you have to do psych to treat psych, I think.
How far along are you in the program? Are you almost done?
No, no, no. So the program's 2.5 years. I'm in my second semester right
Okay,
now.
so another year and change to go.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's good, man. Happy for you. Making big steps, because that's like, well, I've always told everyone, like, I was in NP program. It was a FNP program, and then like I had like maybe like a semester or a year and little over a half a year left, and then I just stopped because there was like a research class that I just didn't want to do. They made me write like a 100-page paper, and
Yeah.
then they're like, it was good, but it wasn't up to our standards, so you have to rewrite it. I was like, from scratch? And I was like, no, I'm done. I'm not. I was like, I like the clinicals, but like the research paper, I was like, bro, I don't need it. And then like every like winter, my wife always noticed like I get into like a little rut where I'm like, should I have just finished it and just done it? But then I go down like a rabbit hole. I was like, would I even want to do FNP kind of thing like that? Because even though like Sinai will, like, there's a lot of people in cath lab, EP lab, that have their FMP, and then they'll hire them in like ADS, attending directed services, or even in like the labs to do like the pre-ops, discharge, sheath pulls, stuff like that. They could always like train you up. But I feel like if I wanted to do something outside of Sinai, then even with whatever experience, just because of the degree, I don't know if I would be able to qualify as the FNP to do, I guess, like adult Jerry stuff or acute care or stuff like that. Because I don't know, that's how I feel, but I probably don't know enough about it. But that's like a
Yeah,
yeah,
it's the thing, like people they get their FNPs and then like there's usually people either go, like you said, like work in a hospital, and pick a specialty and or they end up not using it at all.
hmm.
There's plenty of people like that too.
There's a lot of people in both labs, EP cath lab, that have their NPs and working as staff nurses because uh they're just not using it. But there are a few now. Like, I interviewed one of my coworkers, Riyadh. He still works as a staff nurse, but he made a business of a IV therapy hydration business, and he's like doing really well with that. He was like, I just can't see myself doing hospital NP work when I can make my own business. He has a collaborating physician until he hits like this certain amount of hours, and then it's all his from there. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's a dope thing to do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A lot of people do that IV hydration business. And I mean, I guess it makes sense. It's lucrative. I actually, a buddy of mine down here, he's the same story. He's an NP, started a little business. I think he already got he's autonomous. And people do that. I think also like in New York again, you can make so much money as a regular staff nurse that sometimes it's like, well, what's
True.
the point? Like, I could work 12 hours and make more money and have less responsibility. Like, why would I become a NP?
That's that's like the big topic when, like, I've talked with a few of them, like in the break room or whatever. It's like, why wouldn't you do it? Because you're already pigeonholed as an NP to work usually 4 days a week. But if you're a nurse, you're 3 days a week, and then that fourth day, if you're to do it anyway, is time and a half. So if you're doing that every week anyway, you're probably like you said, making the same or more with less responsibility. Don't got to do the orders, you don't have to do the follow-up calls, you're just doing the grunt work, and then you got to go home. Like,
Yeah,
it's true. But if you wanted to
yeah.
leave New York, I feel like for me, if I wanted to leave to like Florida or Texas, because that's what me and my wife always talk about, it's how could I get paid the most? And it would probably, I would need my NP to do it.
100%. No, you definitely would. And again, so yeah, the nurses they work staff in New York. They don't. What's the point of me using my NP? But then there's the other side to it. It's like, hey, yeah, you might not make more right now, today,
Hmm.
but in the future, when you're tired and you don't want to do staffing anymore, and you don't want to go to administration, and you're just tired of the bedside, you're gonna want to do something else, and then that's when the NP comes in. So, um, It kind of, you gotta, I think everyone has to kind of see what works for them, where they're at. Some people are okay working staff their whole lives. They're cool
Hmm.
with it, do bedside, whatever. And some people are like, no, man, I can't do this forever. Like, I'm gonna get burnt out. I need to do something else. And then, you kind of have to make that decision. Um, I, before, like literally like 2 years ago, before I moved to Florida, 3 years ago, before I moved to Florida, if you asked me, you're gonna go back to school? No, I'm not doing that. What's the point? I'm gonna be traveling. Look at this money that we're making, and then everything falls apart.
Yeah.
The contracts came down, things came back to reality, and so that's why you always kind of have to like kind of adjust and kind of, I tell new nurses all the time, because again, I work with a lot of new nurses. I'm sure we all do.
Hmm.
And I feel, so I was sitting there one day. We were talking about like some show with that we used to watch as kids. I think we're
Hmm.
close close to age. I'm 35, right?
I'm 34.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, there you go. So we're talking about some show, and this one nurse, she's like, "What is that? What is that?" I'm like, "What do you mean? What is that?" Like, it was this movie, and I tell her this movie, and she's like, "I never saw the movie." I was like, "How did you not see this movie?" I was like, "It came out in like whatever, 2000, whatever." She's like, "Oh well, I was like 8 years old." I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm old." I'm an old nurse.
How do you not know
I
this?
forget. Yeah, I forget how old I am. So like, I tell these new nurses like, you gotta have you have to have a plan. You have
Yeah.
to have a plan. Do it early. Figure out what it is you want to do, and have a plan. Don't be stagnant. Like that's the number one
Hmm.
thing in nursing. It's the people that stay in the same place, do the same thing forever. Those are people that are mostly that I see are the ones that are unhappy, burnt out, grumpy old nurses basically.
Yeah.
And the ones that like really kind of like moved around, did different things. I'm tired of ER. I'm gonna go to OR. I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna do outpatient. I'm gonna do home care. I'm gonna do IV hydration. I'm gonna become an NP. I'm gonna whatever telehealth. Not informatics. Like I met
Hmm.
people that did informatics that work for Epic. They're nurses. They work for Epic. They
That's
work almost
awesome.
like a corporate job, like a 9 to 5 corporate job. There's so many different things you can do. And like I think for the new nurses, for the young nurses, like I think us as older nurses, when we got to encourage them, like, hey, don't make a mind mistake. Start have a plan. Figure out what you're gonna do, and and and,
Hmm.
and just don't get stuck doing the same thing.
That's huge. And since we're going on an almost an hour here, we went over a lot of stuff. It, if you have any other advice for like new nurses or even older nurses to take that jump, like how you did so many times, how do you get over that hump of being super stagnant or super comfortable to try that new thing?
Man, I think that when you hit a point, I don't know, like when you hit that point and you're burnt out and you're coming to work, you're just miserable, and then you're coming home and then you're yelling, you're arguing with your spouse, your kids, and you start like you just I don't ever want to experience that again. Like being burnt out
Hmm.
is a terrible feeling. And so you have two choices. You can either continue suffering or you're going to do
Hmm.
something about it. And like,
Hmm.
you know, we can go into conversations about how nurses should get paid more, and there's so much pressure on us and all this kind of stuff. And yes, there is all of that,
Hmm.
but there is also the fact that we are lucky, we are nurses, and we can do lots of different things. We have options,
Yeah.
but we got to use those options. I think no one's going to do anything. You're not going to convince anyone to do anything until they're ready for it. But again, and if I would meet somebody like the new nurses that they start, I tell them, listen, you need to figure out what you want to do, or not even figure out what you want to do, but just know that you have options and know that this is not what you're going to do forever. Even if you like this, I would tell honestly, even if someone said, I love being an ER nurse, I want to be an ER nurse forever. That's great. Why don't you go at a certain point, try something else, leave for a year, and then
You could always come
come
back.
back to it. Come back to it so that like you are more well-rounded. You have more well-rounded experience, and then because you don't know until you try it.
It's true. That's what I like about nursing a lot is that I was talking about it with some other people. Like doctors could doctor, but when they specialize, they're pigeonholed into it. But nurses, you could go any which way you want, any which specialty you want. Figure out what you like. Like you're an ER cath lab nurse, but you're getting your psych NP now. Total crazy side to it, but that is allowable because you could always get the experience no matter which way you go. And like you said, the options are huge in nursing. And then
Yeah.
obviously, yeah, we could always go into pay and all that, but that's like for a different story. Everyone knows that. We wish we got better pay, like let's just say even just like California, but
Mhm.
it's you take what's given in the state you're at. So
Yeah. Yeah,
and that,
definitely. And I also like the last thing I'll say that especially for younger nurses, you don't have to stay in the state that you're at. Like, obviously people have circumstances where they can't leave, but a lot of people, listen, if you don't have kids and you don't have a mortgage,
mhm.
you can go to a different state and go work somewhere where they have better unions, treat people better. You have that option. Like some people they can't, like if they get a specialty, they can't just today I'm leaving, I'm going to go get a job. No, it's like it's a very scary thing. It's hard, but nurses, there's hospitals everywhere. You can go get a job anywhere. That's the great part about it. That's like one of
Let's
the
go into
best
that for a
parts.
second. Let's have this as the last topic. How did
All right.
you like do that? Like I know, how did you just be like, other than like the weather, you're just like, fuck it, I'm going down to Florida. Like, how was that conversation with your wife? How was that thought process with the kids there? And like it's like, damn, like I remember when you left, I was like, damn, I have a kid. Can I do that?
Yeah. Well, so I'll tell you a funny story. So when I was before I came to Mount Sinai, I was the manager at NYU Brooklyn, and my buddy Steve, he was one of the other managers, three of us, and I was like googling like moving to Florida, like nursing in Florida, and I left my screen open. I come back the next day to my desk, and he printed out the "Welcome to Florida" sign all over my desk, literally, like it was just covered. And then they'll say, "Oh, Eugene, you going to Florida? You going to Florida?" Um, how did I do it? It was scary, man. I mean, I had a 4-year-old at the time and a 6-month-old, I think.
Mhm.
Like I said, we went on vacation to Miami. We went on vacation to the Caribbean, and we were like, we really want to do this. And I think it was just the time and place. Like, the travel nursing was big. There was big contracts. I knew that I can come down here and do a contract and not be tied down to a place, so that if I didn't like the area, whatever it was, I'll be able to move around through travel
Mhm.
nursing. That was one. Two, I was just like, we just made a decision. We're like, listen, we're young. We're still young. We were about 32 at the time. Like,
Mhm.
that's still very young.
Yeah, really young.
I was like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Like, we'll come back to New York. Like, yes, it's hard. It's
Yeah.
not easy, but could always come back. I mean, it was scary. I mean, I don't know, like how it was almost like a leap of faith. I was like, I thought about it for so long. It was, dude, we thought about this for years, like
Dang.
at least like 4 or 5 years. We talk about it, and then one day we were just like, let's just do it. And I was like,
That's
and
awesome.
even she was like, I don't know, like maybe we should give some more. And I was like, no, no, let's just go. Let's just go. And kind of just jump
Did
ship,
you
and
fly
it worked
down or you
out.
drove down?
So me and my brother drove down. We drove down, and then, like I said, I was traveling. She came 3 months later because we
Oh
had to
yeah,
like
yeah.
we had to like
Settle in the place.
settle in. She had to like sell whatever all the stuff that we had in New York. We were like selling the house at the time, and all this kind of stuff. So they came 3 months later, but I drove down and they came later.
Man, good for you, man. You got out of here and you're doing big things now.
Yeah, man, it was scary, but it was, and again, listen, Florida has a lot of pluses, but there's also a lot of negatives, and it's not like, rainbows and sunshine and everything's all good. No, it's I would even say that I probably work more now a little bit, I guess. I pick
Mhm.
up more overtime, but the quality of life here is definitely different. It works for
Mhm.
me, it works for my family. We're happy that we're down here.
Mhm.
Um, the cost of living is coming up. It's still, it's getting a little crazy. Overall, yes, I would say that I am definitely happier in Florida than I am in New York, especially for my kids' sake. Um, but there's definitely, you you have to understand that you're not gonna come somewhere, and then that was like, you think like, I'm gonna move it, everything's gonna be good,
Yeah.
it's just, I'm gonna be happy all the time, and then you come, and yeah, you're happy and excited in the beginning, but then life starts, you work this, and it's like the same thing that I was doing in New York,
Mhm.
kind of thing. You're working this, that, school, same thing here. But overall, yeah, I'm definitely happy that I came down here.
Nice, man. And if anyone wanted to reach out and ask you some questions, how would they get in contact with you?
All right. Well, my IG handle is at eraygoro. You could hit me up, DM me anytime. That'd be the best way. I have a LinkedIn account. If you just look up my name, Eugene Raygorodsky. I'm the only. I think I'm the only Raygorodsky. I think if you type Raygorodsky, I should be the only one. But one of the only Raygorodskys out there. So yeah, those are two ways you could reach out.
And man, Eugene, I really appreciate you doing this with me. Even though we haven't like talked in like 2 years.
Yeah.
But dude, this was a lot of fun, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
And
enjoy that
honestly, kudos
sunlight
to you.
out there.
Kudos to you, brother, man. Honestly, I remember when you were talking about starting a podcast. We were in the break room and you were always talking about it, and then you started doing that. I remember you first were like into the finance podcast. I don't know if you still have that YouTube channel.
I switched it.
You switched it. Yeah, I remember that. And
like all 24,000 subs here is now going to be like a nursing channel.
Dude, good for you, man. Honestly, keep it up.
Thanks, man. Enjoy that sunshine there, because right now we don't got it.
Thank you, my brother.
All right. And enjoy the Super Bowl, man.